European art films have played a developing and progressive role in the development of art film history. This audiovisual essay will research that how does Bicycle Thieves reflect the characteristics of European art cinema. I will focus on narrative themes of movie associated with settings, character types, and the particular historic context. Italian neorealism was the consequence of World War II and the defeat of German fascism and the Italian as well. It is the most obviously expressed between left intellectuals, and this requirement has been widely felt in Italy, and it is an artistic pattern that seems to have no relationship with fascism's cultural heritage, especially its rhetorical device, which made social unstable and hard for people to seek a job. Industrially, the conditions for this phenomenon provided a new realistic film for the economic breakdown, which occurred after the fall of Mussolini's regime and Allied invasion in 1943. Furthermore, Bicycle Thieves is a strongly reformist and humanist impulse that sincerely describes the common people's life would be completely to make a link between film and audience, such that the characters would display their inherent humanity, and the audience would understand under natural conditions the characters had to change if humanity was to performance itself more abundant. In addition, the emblematic trait of art cinema is using the director's style to narrative and close the relationship between a film and the audience, and objectively come the film world. The background of Bicycle Thieves is from the underclasses, an insignificant narrative story, a tragedy in the daily life of a worker, a workman and his son searching in a row on the streets for the lost bicycle somebody stolen from him. The tool of his business is the bicycle. He will be unemployed again if he doesn't have the bike. After the hours of search in vain, he tries to steal a bicycle late in the day. He fears the ambushment of degenerated to being a thief, and his son witnesses the whole process. Because picking a bicycle as the main prop in the movie is characteristic both of Italian urban life and of a time when mechanical vehicles such as bikes and cars were still costly and infrequent. The movie uses rhythmic narrative techniques to tell the story. The kid suddenly needs to piss, and he did it in a wall in the middle of the seeking. A rainfall leads the father and son have no choice but stop to shelter in a carriageway. So audience have to forget the chase and wait till the storm's over, just like then. These natural phenomena events are not necessarily signs of something, but close the relationship between the audience and film, of a fact of which we are to be persuaded. They all have the value, the irreplaceable, that any fact has fuzziness. The film also makes a strong contrast in narration. The worker is just as isolated and deprived among his fellow trade unionists as he is walking on the street by himself, or even in that unspeakable scene of the Catholic masses into the complaint he shortly stated. Because the trade union does not exist to help him find lost bikes, but to change the society in which losing his bike forcing a man to poverty. And the worker is not come to complain with the trade union, but to ask someone who will be able to help him seek the stolen bicycle. You can notice that the group of uniproletarian members who behave no differently from a bunch of paternalistic bourgeois toward an unlucky worker. In his personal tragedy, prayers in the church are just as lonely as the poster hanger, but these parts are indispensable, because this indicated a spectacular contrast. The indifference's attitude of the union is justified and normal, because the trade union is struggling not for charity, but justice. But the Kukumami paternalism of the Catholic masses are intolerable, because they turn a blind eye to his private misfortune. In fact, these selfish people actually want to do nothing to change the world people living in. On this topic, the most effective thing is that in a downpour under the shelter, when a bunch of Austrian seminary students besieging a workman, also his son, but audience have no fiery reason to judge them talking in German and gamble on and on.
Ich kann dir sagen, ich hab schon wirklich alles. Nicht nach Franz? Ja. Scheißliche Sauwetter haben wir wieder gehabt. Salzburger Schnürregen ist nichts dagegen. Ich kann dir sagen, ich war wirklich besser aufgelegt, ich herausgefunden.
The Catholic masses, the seminarians, the rain, the restaurant. All these are otherwisely unalterable. Seems there is no one scheduled them in order on a dramatic spectrum. But every single part in this story are ingenious. These are the whole of reality, and follows from the persistence of the Desica's narrative. This is probably the reason why this film has become one of the representative works of Italian New Realism.